Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. My name is Bliss Foster. Welcome back to the Margiela series, where we are exploring every single runway show that Martin Margiela produced at his eponymous house. Welcome to Welcome to Spring Summer 2001. It is October 12th, 2000, and we have actually a really unusual episode. We're honing in on a pretty specific detail of this season. We have a lot more to cover about this season more broadly, and most of that is just going to be covered in the Patreon exclusive part of this episode. Things like these bizarre skirts, the stranger shapes, the gloves top, the care tags top, all of this is just going to be in the Patreon exclusive extended version of this episode. So if you love this series and you want the full experience, go sign up and get to work watching the extended versions of just a ton of the episodes in this series. All right, so we're going to be primarily living in a single motif from this season. Not even an entire theme. We're literally just living in a single solitary motif. The Maison's use of the color red. This is going to give us a really good example of how a designer marries their concept with the final design that appears in a runway. Let's do it! Okay, cool, let's go, let's do this. Since the beginning, Martin's use of red has been quiet, but very consistent. The very first show had red in the outfits themselves, as well as the red footmarks that were left by the shoes on the cotton runway. And that same red painted cotton showed up in the second season as their very first artisanal piece. We had Fall/Winter 1995, where the entire collection was done up in shades of red. We've had a lot of photographs and lighting appearing in red tints. And then we have Isaac interrupting the shot. No, stop. And throughout the oeuvre, there's been little sprinklings of red that are used as an accent color, and even some very weird uses of red, like the bloodstains on the garments in Spring/Summer 1999. This crimson red color has traveled with us the entire time that we've looked at Martin's clothes. But here we're asking the question, how are they actually using this color? If we think about the most typical uses of red, what do we find? So especially in fashion, and especially in French high fashion, red is a romantic color, right? It represents fiery love, passion. We often see red used now in lipstick and in nails and like the bottoms of stilettos. And it's always used to portray this kind of wilder side of womanhood, right? And that doesn't feel naturally very Margiela, does it? The house that's about upending convention and doing away with Parisian codes and priorities, why are they choosing to consistently use this red color? I mean, besides the symbolic context, the house is clearly so good at monochromatic looks that they rightly avoid cerulean for their jackets, and they rightly don't make skirts in chartreuse. So why do we keep coming back to bright red, almost this obnoxious crimson color? I think that we are witnessing a very clever cultural sleight of hand here. How do I show sleight of hand? What do you, like, I tricked you. Fashion tends to adopt new ideas very slowly. At the time, in like the late 90s and in the early 2000s, they were still romanticizing this idea of, you know, the symbolism of like red, the color of passion. But they were doing it in a little bit of a different way. Because there was this cynicism in the 90s and the 2000s that was generally wanting to buck against convention. So most designers were finding new ways of being romantic while gently poking fun at the idea of this symbolism. So like here we can see that there's a different use of color. They're not using red, but we can still see that this stuff is intended to be like this playful, cutesy, passionate image of a young woman. It's just being updated with modern color trends from that time. The same feeling is being called back to with the trope of red. It's just being done in a different way. But also the 90s and 2000s were this huge era of flat humor. I've always thought that was best shown with the hit drink from 1993 called OK Soda. OK Soda. It's fine. So this is more in the style of what Martin was doing. Martin is, through his use of red, making almost a flat, deadpan joke about the trope of red being passionate and womanly. Because red is about passion. If you're a woman, and we are talking about women in this show, if you're a woman and you want to express this passionate, wild side of yourself, everyone can wear red. Rockefeller and waitress. It's unlike any other thing in Paris fashion tropes where it's a universal color that is accessible to everyone. There's no elitism to red. But Margiela, as we've said, has always had this monochromatic, avant-garde, deconstructed, refusing convention deal going on, right? And that leads back to our question, why is he engaging with this corny trope of red? And I think that's because at its core, in everyone's innermost self, even the most cynical people, we all long in some way for the comfort of convention. There's something there that all of us want to go back to. Conventions feel tried and true, and they feel safe. And even if that convention was laid down in a time when we weren't even alive, there's this, I think, strange pull of nostalgia for ideas like red, the color of passion, or a man should wear a well-tailored suit. But the problem, of course, is that many of these conventions exclude some of our friends, or at times they seem to exclude everyone. Beauty standards, gender roles, the list goes on as long as you're willing to look at it. But I do think that there is this part of human nature that longs for the safe feeling of convention. And I think that that's part of why Martin chose to go with a convention that doesn't exclude anyone. Red. But here within this show, there's this quality of being able to make fun of those conventions and kind of mock them while still being able to fall back into them and embrace them for their safety. And it looks out of place, as it should. Red is not a typical color. But it finds its way in a quick flash and a handful of looks every few seasons. And it's cynical in a perfect way. It's flat, it's deadpan. It does mock the convention of the lady in the red dress, this sexed up icon of the male gaze. And Margiela has used this in the past, like in his first show, to demonstrate that icon as a side of women that they can pull out and put away at their discretion. It's not the full stereotype. There's no push-up bra, there's no perfectly disheveled curly blonde hair, but in its own way, the legacy of red in Martin's shows has been a bohemian, very 1990s image of the sexually empowered woman that the stereotype tries and fails to capture. This use of red just feels more honest, which is Martin's specialty, right? And here in this show, Spring Summer 2001, we see a playful mockery of that trope, and we see, interestingly, the gender flipped in the suspenders of what is literally part of men's suiting. It kind of adds to the tension of the legacy of the woman in the red dress with the women's power dressing of the 1980s. But kind of like the woman in the red dress trope, what's so strange about the power dressing thing is that it doesn't look very powerful, at least in hindsight. We're getting into the realm of opinions here, and this is just my opinion, but this to me strikes me much more as dress up that's being dictated by the male gaze still. But this is men's suiting, and it's big men's suiting. There is no male gaze here. And that's not to say that attempts from women to nip their waist in or to achieve a more hourglass figure are somehow bad. I'm definitely not telling anybody how to dress. What I'm trying to do is really hone in on what this show is trying to discuss. So I don't want there to be any confusion here. There definitely is no value assessment from me personally about this thing. I'm just trying to uncover what Martin is, I think, saying in this show. We actually see another flip on the stereotype by referencing historic womanhood with these widely cut skirts that have incorporated peignets. Peignets are a fashion historic relic of the 17th and 18th centuries. They present another interesting clash with our current cultural mindset about the use of the color red, because peignets remind us of an age that we all think of as being full of strict modesty and sexual suppression. And the use of red with the peignet skirt is another way of adding that cognitive dissonance that was also present in the gender flip from the suiting look. And in a more subtle way, we get a similar tension from the red turtleneck. Out of all of the garments that reflect a wild, fiery, passionate attitude, turtlenecks probably finished last in that list. But this has always been the case for Margiela. He's proposing a sexiness that's very anti-1980s. The idea of strappy sexiness kind of fades away when you consider how much sexier it is just to be a confident person wearing what you want. And again, I'm not making any value assessments. I think that the goal here is to propose that women have lots of different options for this, that sexiness and stoicism and intellectualism, that these are not monoliths within women, that these things can be expressed in a variety of different ways, as many different ways as there are people. And what's so cool is that watching over this whole collection is this familiar symbol in the Maison's body of work. This is the iridescent plastic coverings over the model's eyes. And I think this is a good way to remind us that the Maison doesn't make its statements angrily. It's not rebelling or like doing the middle finger up at like conventions or whatever. It's expressing all of these things in a very joyous way. There's no deep, angry cynicism when they're challenging these cultural conventions. There's joy to it. There's no big, bright, waitressy smile with it. It's still the same house. Austere, surreal, a little twinge of horror here and there. But we can't forget that a fundamental part of the Maison is an honest joy. Okay, so we honed in really deep in this episode, but I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about how much thought was going into the Maison's use of even a very small motif. And ultimately, this is the reason why this house is such a fulfilling one to love. I was very drawn into the mystery of these clothes and these shoes and these mysterious looking photographs. I remember looking at this stuff in 2014 and being just so convinced that there was something there to uncover, that there was some nuanced storytelling and cultural commentary that was happening if I could just put the pieces together. And it does feel really good to know that this stuff goes as far down as you want to take it. I love you all a lot. And if you want to watch the full episodes and if you want to support independent fashion journalism, I humbly ask that you go support on Patreon. Your views mean the world to me. Your comments, your shares. I mean, the fact that you're willing to sit down for 10 minutes and watch content that I made, that means the earth to me. But this channel cannot exist unless folks support it with a few dollars every month. Again, I love you all a lot. I'll talk to you later. Bye.